Well, hey, you've discovered Moderate Divide. We take a moderate, non-emotional look at two sides of a topic. Today's topic, patriotism. America, let's roll.
Hello, I'm Patrick, proud patriot. A house divided cannot stand. As Americans, we need to stand together. So even if you disagree with the president, you shouldn't threaten him, you shouldn't mock him, you shouldn't disrespect people in uniform, you shouldn't celebrate people who break the law. As Americans, if we can all follow the rules, we can all get along, even though we're all very different.
Hello, Safety Man George here. I think it's important to remember that laws that were written 250 years ago don't always line up with today's world. The way we treated women, the fact that we owned slaves. I think it's very important to remember that our Constitution was written to be able to be amended. It's very patriotic to keep up with social and technological trends. So what makes someone a patriot? Look, if you love your country and its citizens, that's patriotic. Some people are willing to take that to the extreme and they're willing to die for their country as soldiers, but for the rest of us, vote in elections, stand up for what matters. That's patriotic.
Well, veterans for sure. Anyone who wears a uniform and tries to protect our country. I would say any red-blooded American who loves this country, who wants to uphold its values and make sure we stay number one, well, hell, that's a patriot to me.
It's not just American. You can be patriotic no matter what country you're from. You gotta make sure you're not being xenophobic when you're trying to be patriotic.
All right, let me clarify something. If I say U.S. first, it doesn't mean I don't care about the other countries, but it's like when you're on an airplane. The oxygen mask drops down, you're supposed to put your own mask on before you help someone else, right? Same thing.
This might be the most agreeable discussion yet.
We'll see. We both define patriot the same way, yes, but I don't think we agree necessarily on when it applies. George has mentioned keeping up with the times a few times, so I think we might disagree there.
The big divide here, and probably in a lot of discussions, is not necessarily the topic itself, but deciding exactly where it applies. Patrick and I have talked previously about gun control and whether or not we should allow more regulations.
We did, yes, and I think that's a great example because I think that asking us to give up our constitutional rights is very unpatriotic.
And I believe looking out for the safety of our citizens is extremely patriotic, especially if it requires sacrifice. So we agree that we should be patriotic, but just don't quite agree on what that means. And we can disagree, but let's look at the definition. A patriot is defined as someone who vigorously supports their country.
Right, we established that part.
And is prepared to defend it from its enemies and detractors. See, this is a call to action. This is when, if we have a disagreement, it can escalate.
Right, so the question is, who's the enemy? Who are these detractors?
That's a good point, because I think anytime two people start arguing, it's too easy to immediately decide, you're my enemy, and that's not healthy.
The problem is when emotions flare up, logic goes out the window. People might call me racist and sexist about every little thing while they're trying to erode the foundation of our country.
But disagreeing isn't a problem. I think we should encourage people to think and to express their ideas because this is the way you can grow. And I think, again, being willing to change and adapt and grow is extremely patriotic.
Right, but as we figure out how we grow, there are certain lines that can't be crossed. There are certain principles that we were founded on that we need to maintain.
But which lines do we care about? Who determines that? Is it the president, the Congress? Congress is supposed to be representing their little portions of the country. So if their section of the country wants change, they should be pushing for change.
Well, first and foremost, I think the Constitution needs to be the foundation for every political discussion. Beyond that, though, if you're wanting everything to change, if you hate that much about the country, that doesn't sound very patriotic to me.
No, don't hate your country, and yes, we should protect the Constitution, but the Constitution was created to be amended. The fact that we can change it is not unpatriotic.
Well, to an extent, yes, but we shouldn't be taking every radical extreme idea from social media and adding it to the Constitution.
Of course there need to be limits, but think about it. At the time, abolishing slavery or giving women the right to vote, these things were considered radical, and yet now they're amendments that at least most people think we should keep.
This is true, and this is why these decisions are very important. That's why we need to make sure we're doing what's best for our country and for our future. We need to make sure it's not just someone's upset that they're not getting their way. Once we've decided something, that's the way it is. Accept it.
That's how it is. Except when we made the 18th Amendment, which was prohibition, prohibiting the sale of alcohol. That stayed in effect for over a decade until we made a new amendment that said, never mind, we're getting rid of that one. So, there is precedent for removing amendments.
Touché. I guess it's a lot easier to look back in hindsight and see what the right decision was. In the moment, though, we still need to try to make sure we're making the best decision we can.
I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of people are swayed more by emotion than logic. They let their partisanship guide them more than their facts do.
Sure, I think there's so much outrage toward the president that people, they won't even listen to what he's saying. They will just automatically reject it.
True, and I think it goes the other way too. His followers then just accept whatever he says with no question.
Well, speaking of the president, here's a question from our social media feed. As a patriot, do you feel obligated to support your president in everything he does? Yes, like I said earlier, a house divided cannot stand. So we voted for him. He's our president. That doesn't mean I agree with everything. Most of what he tweets is ridiculous, but he is still our president. So I respect the position. I respect him in that position.
I think respect is very important, but like we pointed out earlier, part of your patriotic duty is to call out detractors when you see them. I think this goes all the way to the top of the chain.
So what does that mean? Every 4 to 8 years, that's a new traitor in the White House?
No, not every time you disagree with someone. Just because you disagree with someone, that doesn't mean the other person's a traitor. But you dismissed his ridiculous tweets earlier. The problem is, if that makes us look like a laughingstock to the rest of the world, then he is a detractor to our country.
Right, or he's putting a strong foot down and negotiating us back to success after previous presidents have weakened us.
Here's where it becomes dangerous. Our president questioned the patriotism of football players who were kneeling. He wielded patriotism in order to silence their protest.
Yeah, but they were disrespecting the flag, which is disrespecting the country. If they hate the country that much and they're that unpatriotic, why would I watch their show?
But that's exactly my point. He's weaponized your feelings so that you feel like they are attacking you personally. He's created this thing where we're no longer discussing the protest, but now we're discussing whether or not this is offensive to me. People are more likely to know about this controversy than they are about the actual protest.
Maybe you're okay with the anthem protest, but I'm not.
Look, they're not protesting the anthem itself. This is not the topic, and we're definitely not going to agree on this one.
You're not likely.
But the issue is manipulating people to agree with you by saying, the thing I think, no, that's the patriotic choice. It gives people to you arbitrarily. It's like when he says the media, if he doesn't like something, he calls it the enemy of the people. That way you feel it's patriotic to also hate the media.
Fake news media.
Exactly. He's trying to take your patriotism and use that as a reason for you to ignore stories he doesn't like.
I'm not going to apologize for being loyal to my country.
No, and you shouldn't. But free speech is patriotic. The First Amendment gives us the right to free speech, which is the right to protest, and it gives the right to have a press, which these are not things we should be attacking.
But the president also has free speech, right? So he gave his opinion, and now you're attacking him for it.
I'm not attacking his free speech. I'm just pointing out that he is manipulating people. He is using patriotism to serve his own ego.
Well, speaking of egos, obviously, America, we're number one, right? Patrick mentioned this, plus his America First movement, so let's talk more about that. Well, sure, but I don't think it's really having an ego to be proud to live in the best country in the world. It's patriotic to have pride in your country.
Look, it's great to love your country, but this idea that we're number one, that we're superior to everyone else, is just false. We're number 37th when it comes to healthcare, we're 17th in education, and 27th when it comes to environmental concerns. When it comes to taking care of our people and our planet, we're far from number one.
Yeah, but your thing sounds a lot less patriotic.
See right there, using patriotism to silence me.
I look at patriotism like this. You're at your kid's sports game and you're watching them play, right? You yell at, "You're the best." He's not the best. Not at all. But you love your child. You want to encourage your child, so you say that. You don't want to yell out, "Try to be better." That's not cool.
Well, certainly don't insult them. Yeah, you want to encourage your child, but you also need to point out their flaws so that they can improve and work on it and get better. You're not going to improve just by thinking, I'm already the best.
And now for one last social media comment. It's hard to feel patriotic toward my country and toward our senators when the politicians are bought by lobbyists and special interest groups. It makes me feel like my vote doesn't matter.
Look, if your leadership is failing you, stand up, make changes. If you don't feel you're being represented, vote for new people or run yourself if you're really passionate about it. We need people who are willing to stand up and make changes, not people who are going to run away.
Well, keep in mind that these leaders are voted in, so if you didn't get the person you want, you're in the minority. You're kind of alone in your opinion.
That assumes everyone's actually voting. When half the population doesn't even vote, then we really don't know what the majority wants.
Well, sure we do. They decided their voice doesn't matter. So when they don't get their way, we should continue to treat them like their voice doesn't matter. It's very patriotic to vote. It's not patriotic to not vote and then complain about it. Well, now that we've beaten each other red, white, and blue, let's have our final thoughts.
It's great to have pride in your country. Just make sure that doesn't turn into xenophobia or nationalism. Patriotism doesn't mean you do everything that everyone in your country says, but you do have to just stand up for it and call out corruption when you see it. That's patriotism.
And sometimes the people you have to stand against are the ones within your own country. Some people's vision for our country is not
patriotic, it's not what we really stand for. Well, as we say around here, you don't have to agree, you just have to see their point. So Patrick, what is George's point?
Well, as we said for the whole thing, we don't really disagree on what patriotism is, it's just when it applies. George is mostly concerned about the melting pot, the citizens. He wants to make sure they're taken care of. He's also concerned that some other agendas can be disguised as patriotism.
And George, what about Patrick? Patrick believes in America first, especially when it comes to the Constitution. He believes that we need to take care of ourselves above all others. He doesn't see that as discrimination, but just as being a patriotic American. Well, I hope you enjoyed another Moderate Divide. If you did, let me know what you liked in the comments. And if you didn't, let me know what you liked in the comments.